I often debate with myself about what I consider to be my favorite series of all time. If we're talking about anime, the options are tough. But if you're talking about manga, I feel like it's hard to top the goats of Shonen Jump, One Piece, and Death Note. But to me, what tops it all is Tokyo Ghoul. Sui Ishido, who was the author of Tokyo Ghoul, is open about how the deadlines and weekly nature of Shonen Jump affected his project. Quote, "How do you feel after finishing 7 years of serialization? It feels like I've been disposed of an evil spirit. During serialization, I feel like I had been taken over by a different person. This happened recently, but one morning I woke up with absolutely no clue what I should do." End quote. Tokyo Ghoul has some of the most visceral and raw manga panels I've ever seen, and yet, you can also see how rushed Ishida was in some parts, where it's virtually impossible to tell what's going on. Despite this, to me, Tokyo Ghoul is a work of art, which was confined by the chains of a weekly schedule, but all of the best art pieces have their flaws. Let me get to the point. Imagine a series, written by Sui Ishida, that has none of the constraints of the weekly schedule holding it back, and is written during his most experienced years. That's what Choujin X is. Don't get me wrong, Choujin X has a lot of issues, one of which is actually its strange schedule, believe it or not, because it's hard to be excited about a series when you don't really know when the chapters will come out. So Choujin X's greatest strength also turns out to be its greatest weakness. Despite all of this, I'm confident that Choujin X will soon be at the forefront, with series like Dandadan, as the face of the new generation of anime and manga. And that's the key to understanding this. I think it really will come down to an inspired anime adaptation, similar to the treatment that Dandadan received from Science Saru, and that's up in the air. I think a lot of animation studios are probably hesitant to touch Choujin X because of the slow release schedule of the series. It's been 5 years since the series started, and while I think there's a lot of content for readers to enjoy so far, I'll be the first to admit that the series is not nearly as long as one would expect from a series that is over 5 years old, and animation studios are nothing if not cautious. I'd be willing to bet that Sui Ishida has his reservations after the anime adaptation of Season 2 of Tokyo Ghoul, which in my opinion ruined an amazing series that had so much for them to work with. Despite this, Sui Ishida mentioned in an interview that he was interested in an anime adaptation in the future. I'm not usually a betting man, but if I had to place money on it, I think I would say that when the Choujin X anime comes out, it's definitely going to break the internet. Now, why am I super hyped for Choujin X? Spoiler warning for anyone who hasn't read this series and wants to give it a try. So right off the bat, I think the perfect way to describe Choujin X is an uncanny blend of My Hero Academia combined with the visceral nature of Tokyo Ghoul. And I mean, when I say it's uncanny, the parallels are actually kind of insane, and I'm totally here for it. I love how this series kind of captures the interesting aspects of the power setup of My Hero Academia, while flipping it upside down and giving it that crazy horror-inspired vibe of Tokyo Ghoul. The story starts out introducing us to a trio of main characters, which if you're a longtime fan of anime, you'll recognize as a trait common in big shonen jump manga. Tokyo, Azuma, and Ellie. The story primarily follows Tokyo, his childhood friend Azuma, and the wild card / kind of romantic interest is Ellie, who, I can't even lie, is one of my favorite characters. Through a series of events, Tokyo and Azuma end up shooting each other with a serum that will turn them into Choujin, which is this world's version of ghouls or quirks. I would say they're like quirks that develop randomly in certain people and look like insane ghouls. The Choujin gene develops in people during moments of peak anxiety or stress, and oftentimes take the form of that person's obsession. For example, there's a character who is called the Sinker Choujin. He's a former baseball player, and while he was in high school, he was known to be able to throw a fastball at over 93 miles per hour. But while he was a gifted pitcher, the pressure of becoming a professional baseball player and bringing his family out of the slums in the south side turned him into a Choujin, which changed his life forever. A Choujin's power are dependent on their nature, and the Sinker Choujin has 3 distinct abilities. Sinker. When he throws an object and it hits something, it'll sink their surrounding space. In his chaos state, which I'll get to in a minute, he has an ability called Gravity Well, which is like his sync ability on steroids. And then he has an ability called Gravity Barrier, which repels attacks directed at him. All Choujin have one power that's universal, called Raise. Essentially, this is where things get crazy. Choujin have the power to literally basically raise themselves from the dead, or from the brink of death, that is. This power-up gives Choujin X the perfect system to just create some of the most insane fights, because when someone is about to die, or their body's just completely mangled, they can heal it all instantly, allowing for the characters to go all out and just decimate each other in their fights. But doesn't mean there are no stakes, because while technically the Choujin can raise indefinitely, they can't actually come back to life if they're completely destroyed. And when they transform, they slowly go into what's called a chaos state, where they begin to lose their minds, and in rare circumstances, it can create irreversible effects of being permanently turned into monsters. When I mentioned that Choujin X reminds me of My Hero Academia, I just wanted to show you two characters, one from My Hero Academia and the other one from Choujin X. Without spoiling completely what happens with this character because it's in the more recent chapters, she literally has one of the most insane fights with a villain who seemed like a random villain of the week until it just went crazy. This scene is what inspired me to make this video, and what makes me confident that Choujin X, if properly animated, will wreck the internet. Aside from the crazy power system, Choujin X also has one of the most interesting lores I've seen in this series, and again, I won't spoil it, but it goes in depth about the history of the world, the wars that have been fought, and the cultist leaders who are entangled in them. The characters are all super fun, and they each have their moments of pure hype. Tokyo, the main character, has perfect main character energy to me, and I love his nonchalant attitude. Azuma is kind of like an Eren Yeager character, except he's not even the main character. And then Ellie, who's my favorite, has one of the most mysterious abilities in the series, and she's simultaneously one of the funniest and relatable characters, and the coolest. I would give Choujin X a 9 out of 10. The only thing holding it back from a 10 out of 10 being that it hasn't reached its full potential yet. But I'm positive because I know Sui Ishida. He's got something crazy cooking, and I hope you're ready for it to come.